Your Twins are coming off a sweep, not only of a doubleheader, but of a series against the A's. They get a little reprieve here in the rain on Monday, and then it's Tampa Bay. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at Royce Lewis apparently being the best baseball player alive. And if it's not him, maybe Carlos Correa. But we'll do all that here on Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, how are ya? It is Locked On Twins. We're back here for yet another edition. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNEN. Joining me from a very special location that he may or may not disclose is Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown on the tweets. What up?
Hey, Brandon. Well, family's in downtown Chicago for a little road trip vacation. Going to see some White Sox baseball. But other than that, we're doing fine.
And how long of a trip is that from KC area to there driving?
It's about 8 hours,
Okay.
Maybe a little less. So
yeah, not much different than Minneapolis then.
Yeah, there's like a triangle there where it's, yeah. So Chicago, Kansas City is here. Minnesota's about this. Minneapolis is about this far away, and Chicago's about that far away in a different direction. Dallas is about very centrally located.
Nice. Well, again, this is Locked On Twins, and we are very glad you're here. Thanks for making.
I don't know anything about them.
Thanks for making this your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Pods, or even something I've never heard of. We're probably there, but also on YouTube. So again, thanks for checking us out on YouTube and as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we are coming at you after a Twins 4-game sweep of the Oakland A's. A few of those games were maybe a little bit more dicey than you'd like to have. But at the end of the day, no matter what a certain columnist says, not winning by a 14-2 score instead of 6-2 or whatever, we do not care. The Twins are now 5.5 back in the division, a half game behind those Royals. And I don't know. I mean, do you think that maybe Guardians fans are kind of sitting uncomfortably in their seats with all the trash they've talked this year? Because 5.5 games in mid-June, not that big of a deal.
Well, from what I've seen of how the Guardians fans talk, I think they sit uncomfortably all the time.
That's
whether
true.
It's on their hands or on their booties or whatever, on their hand, stand on their hands. I think they're kind of an uncomfortable lot, and they're waiting for the other shoe to drop and for the Guardians to. I mean, lots of things have gone right for them. I think they've overplayed themselves. They're better than mediocre, but they're not running away with nothing in the AL Central. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and I follow actually an impressive array of Guardians fans, including the Locked On Guardians guys who are tremendous. I love doing crossovers with those guys because they do such a great job. But even fans who are a little more level-headed, and they're talking about the bullpen regression. Some of them are just beside themselves that Carlos Carrasco keeps getting starts for them. Nostalgia only goes so far if a guy can't get people out, and they've dealt with so many injuries. Shane Bieber, they basically got nothing. And Gavin Williams working his way back, but not quite there yet. Tristan McKenzie not looking like the previous version of himself. It's, I don't know. I'm going to declare game on in the division. How do you feel about that?
They've shown lots of resilience. It's just funny how, for the most part, all these things that have the injuries and the regression other places hasn't really, affected their lead that much in the Central or their standing overall. But, at the same time, you can see the signs of difficulties ahead. It's just you can only go so long without having 2 or 3 regular starting pitchers going with mixed results from the lineup. With the Guardians, they haven't had like anybody play the outfield other than Stephen Kwan of any quality.
And he missed time.
15 years. Yeah, and he wasn't out there. And they don't have any depth there. They don't have, they bring up players from the minors who are, mediocre at best. They don't, I like what Stephen Vogt does, and I like what Terry Francona established.
Yes. You can tell Vogt's already a good manager.
Yeah. You could see it when he was the player, watching him play and listening to him talk, that's what, if he wanted to do it, he would be good at it. Just a good communicator and a clear thinker. And these are important things. They're not unimportant things. But for the Guardians to actually establish themselves and run away with the division, I think that's something that's going to be on the Twins. If the Twins are mediocre and underperforming, that's how it's going to happen. If the Twins take care of their own business, they're still going to be the best team in the division.
And if we're talking about good managers, I want to talk about one that I'm not sure is or isn't good, but I feel like Mark Kotsay just looks miserable, man. I mean, he really doesn't. I mean, you look at him and he just looks beside himself. He's put in a tough spot, but I think he's a pretty good manager, all things considered. He's just in a tough spot. And, the Twins just, even in the last game where Miranda's home run, salted it away for them, like he kept those, well, not he specifically, but those games were close enough where you're not like, oh, the Twins simply outclassed them in all 4 games. Now, with that said, the offensive production for the Twins was incredible, and I'll go over those numbers when we get a chance. But yeah, this A's team, man, I just don't know what to make of them. They've got some interesting pieces, but they're also an incredible case study in remembering some guys. Not only Brent Rooker, who Twins fans remember, and Daz Cameron, who's Mike Cameron. Solo Fangraphs back there.
That's the funniest Freudian slip of the day right there.
Aledmus Diaz, we all remember.
Oh, man.
And Andujar. JJ Bleday was a post-hype sleeper that has finally kind of found his way. I'm trying to think of who else came where I was like, yeah, I remember that guy. There's been a few of them in that series, and they seem to have like 20 of them on the team. JD Davis was another one. I'm sure I'm missing somebody else, but it's just
the A's results this year have been better than anybody thought they would be. And that has to be on, giving credit to Kotsay, but also David Forst. And I think, I don't know if Billy is off finding jeans models or soccer teams or what. I'm sure he still does things, but they've been better, and they were competitive-ish in the Twins series. We make fun of Lavelle Neal saying the Twins should have won this game 14-2. Now I will defend Lavelle a little bit because nobody has been. It's all been piling on, and I don't have a problem with that at all. But I will say this about I don't think that it matters that the Twins could have won this game 14-2, and instead they only won 6-2.
6. Yeah.
But yeah, right. But I will say that people complain about little things during the game on Twitter that if you add them up, if they had gone right or had they gone as they thought they think the Twins should have done, then they would have won 14-2. You know what I mean? So people make the little complaints about what the Twins aren't doing well in a game, and if you add them all up, you sort of get Lavelle's opinion that, well, they really should have won this game 14-2. So I just think it's not what he said is a different packaging of what people say during games all the time. So it isn't that different in that respect. So shout out to Lavelle, I guess.
One more remembering some guys that I just pulled up, Sean Newcomb, who was a big time prospect with the Saints. Duke Newcomb. Actually, I have an Ottawa team. You and I are in the same league, and I had Marcus Stroman and Sean Newcomb. So it was Duke Newcomb was the name of my team that year. because Stroman with Duke.
It's weird how on the same page we are all the time about things, but I don't know where in the book that page is. So it's very, I'm glad that we're together somehow connected.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I was during your intro, I was trying to do a sweep, but with my camera position, I can't, you know how I like to act out the things that you say in a funny way, but I can't. Is that sweeping? I don't know. Maybe I'm churning butter.
You're doing something. It looks like you might be hacking away with an axe. But let's take a quick second and pause. When we come back, before we get down the road, I do have an interesting theory for why I think fans struggle with even the slightest things going wrong in baseball. So we'll talk about that. I do want to talk about, apparently the Twins have two of the very best players in existence right now playing and kind of doing like, it was almost like they did a Bash Brothers routine in front of the A's. And we'll talk about the Rays because we're talking about a soft schedule, and I want to know if you consider the Rays part of that soft schedule. So, again, quick pause, and when we come back, we'll talk about all that fun stuff. Summertime means baseball, and of course, it also means the NBA Finals. The final game of the Finals may be tonight if the Celtics can show up better than they did in Game 4. But you can bet on all of that on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So if you had bet Twins over the A's at any point this weekend, you'd be in the money. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Not today for the Twins because the Twins are off, but you can bet on all those things. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. If you are looking to get into the game today, division-wise, you've got the Tigers at -111 and plus 1.5 runs against the spread. They are plus 168 on the money line. And the over-under is exactly 8. They're facing the Braves, which is certainly not a very good matchup, but that game 6:08 Central tonight. You can give that a look. But again, FanDuel is where you want to go. FanDuel.com/lockedon, America's #1 sports book. It's FanDuel. And you can also go to Prize Picks, which is North America's largest daily fantasy sports platform. It's super easy. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. More than or less than is the easiest thing you can imagine. It's math for journalists like Dave and I, and we can figure it out. So can you. If you want to do some riskier picks, you can get in on the demons. It's not as bad as it sounds. It's not that scary. The picks are marked in red, and they're meant to seem scary. Exactly, Dave. But it just means that you're taking a little more risk. You can win up to 100 times your bet, though. So $10 gets you 1,000 if you hit on one of those tough ones like Appalachian State over Michigan. But if you want to stick to, I'm going to be honest with you, Dave. I didn't know how to bet back then. I don't even know if it was legal in Minnesota, but I wanted to put money down on that. That would have been the all-time icebreaker for someone getting into sports betting. But I'm not sure.
You don't stay away from it.
Well, I'm not sure it was super
if you don't
legal.
know. Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't super legal.
That's where you went wrong.
But anyway, you can do the Goblin picks. Those are a little safer, like Twins over A's. Those are marked in green because they're going to keep you in the green and land you consistent victories, obviously a lower payout. But again, more consistent wins. And if that's what you're looking for, they've got you. If you want to do NBA, you don't have much time left. We're coming up to Game 5 on the finals. You can pick more than or less than on three-pointers, free throws, et cetera, et cetera. And for baseball, you can do pitcher strikeouts, first inning runs, home runs, you name it, they've got it. Download the app today and enter code LOCKEDONMLB. That's all lowercase. That's all one word. And they'll match your deposit, your first deposit, up to $100. That's $100 deposit match. LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, all lowercase as your promo code. Join Prize Picks today. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So, Dave, my theory is that I call it my video game theory. When you play a baseball video, you're ticked every year you don't win the World Series. You basically become a Yankees fan. And you get you get put into like this vacuum of only positive outcomes. You know, your great players regress slower than actually they do in the major leagues. Your rookies very rarely bust unless they are, they just don't develop. But the ones who develop don't regress. Like, for instance, Alex Kirilloff, who's had ups and downs. You know, you don't get those as much on the game. And when you get to the playoffs, you expect to win the World Series every single year. I think that mentality, in addition to football fans who live and die with their team every single week, not necessarily for bad reason, or college football teams who literally live and die every single week because the national champion might lose one game all year. I think those things seep into the ideology of people who watch baseball, consume baseball on a maybe slightly more casual basis. And that's why we get some of this outcry where things go slightly wrong and people just flip their lids.
Well, I think some of it is people who feel like if they're passionate about something, they kind of have to wear it on their sleeve. They have to feel everything all the time that happens, because if they don't, are they doing their job as a fan? You know, which is, you know, being hyper focused and interested in what they're watching. So it's I think it's a little bit of that. It's sort of human nature to you know, that you know, I can consume sports like that from time to time too, but baseball's the ultimate of, you know, we say this all the time, but it's a long season, and it really is. It takes forever. It's almost, I think it's about half as long as an MLS season, which goes about 18 months. But it's still, you know, you gotta be patient, because you got your team, whatever they're doing, and then, you know, half of your anxiety is wrapped up in something that you're not controlling any of it, but you're not even really, you're paying half attention to what the Guardians are doing. They're going to go through their ups and downs too, and that just, it all kind of multiplies. And it's if you let it, it can bother you a lot and become not fun. And it's certainly not fun to listen to. You know, you complain or bemoan what's going on, and oh, this only happens in Minnesota sports, and we're cursed, and I hate myself. And it's just it's repetitive, and it gets old, and it's not fun to listen to. You got to chill out. That's basically my advice.
So Twins in the 4-game series with the A's, we'll switch directions here just a little bit, hit 345 with a 411 on base and a 577 slugging percentage. So basically like an MVP candidate year in and year out. The OPSs just jump off the screen. 1526 for Carlos Correa, 1053 for Santana, 1167 for Kepler, 1571 for Lewis, 1136 for Buxton, 1200 for Miranda. Even Austin Martin getting in on it with 1125. Every Twin except for Manuel Margot and Christian Vasquez and Kyle Farmer had multiple hits. In 4 games, guess how many times the Twins struck out?
In 4 games, they struck out 17 times.
18 times, which that's a really good guess.
I'm pretty good at guessing these things, aren't I?
Yeah, not bad. Only one player struck out 4 times. It was Willie Castro, who, you know, had a perfectly acceptable series. But that's 1 strikeout per game for him. And everyone else was 3 strikeouts or lower. In fact, only one other player was 3 strikeouts. That was Christian Vasquez in 8 plate appearances. Everyone else struck out 2 times or less. I feel like I saw a stat. JP Sears really struggled in that first inning. And I even tweeted about it, was like, they got to cover 18 innings today, and he might not get out of the first. Like, that's a big deal. You know, you talk about Joan Duran pitching the 9th inning in the first game and then not having him for the second. And, oh, no, you know, it's a lot worse to have your starter go out in the first inning of the first game of a double dip, even with that 27th guy.
I think that's maybe where Kotsay gets some of his, you know, you mentioned what he sort of appeared to you as during the series, like the weight of the world. You know, I think that those kinds of things probably go through his heads.
The Sears threw 50-some breaking balls, off-speed pitches, and got 0 swings and misses. Like, I don't know if that's tipping or just having a non-good, you know, secondary. I mean, a lot of times too, if you're tipping, it can be also like how the ball comes out of your hand. You know, if it jumps as a breaking ball or jumps as an off-speed pitch, no matter what it was. And, you know, we did see Correa whisper to Royce Lewis. So that to me is also why it's valuable to have Correa hitting so high in the order, is because he's going to see those things probably more so at the plate than from the dugout. But again, that just shows the immense value that Carlos Correa doesn't have to rake to be worth $30 million when he's playing great defense and he's able to disseminate those sorts of things. But also, he's raking. So he had a 120 whatever weighted runs created plus when that comment was made, and now it's like 140 something.
For sure. We've both said before about the little thing, we call them little things, but the recurring subtle, let's call them subtle rather than little
Subtle
things that Correa does to be a valuable player and a teammate. And you make a really good point about him hitting higher in the order. Usually I don't get on Rocco for batting order, changes and differences and all that stuff. But I think the higher he hits in the order and the higher Lewis hits, the better. Now, you said something during the series that, there's no better player than Royce Lewis in the league when he's healthy and doing well. And
slight
hyperbole. And I don't think that's literally true, but I also think that it is, you are not far off, especially, at least we're talking about best hitters in the league. I'm not sure how deep his defense compares to other people. I don't know.
Okay.
Right. So he's not quite a both sides of the ball. Like, you see Mookie Betts. There's a guy I would say that's probably better playing until he broke his hand. Both sides of the ball and just being able to play shortstop. But even when he was in the outfield. So, but Royce is like, he comes up with the bases loaded and you expect a grand slam. I mean, it isn't necessarily hyperbole what we're saying. We are seeing a great player, a great young player, everything coming together for him. And he's one of, I would say, the 10 best players in the league. I think that's fair. And that's an amazing compliment. So, and some of it is being able to take advantage of those little cues that Correa, you see the Correa whisperer in his ear. It's one thing to know what's coming or to have some good advice, but to put it into action in that at bat, in that moment, is another little subtle thing about these players that is so darn impressive. And I think you're definitely onto something there with him being one of the elites for sure.
No better mentor for him in the game than Carlos Correa either. Would it be in poor taste to nickname him North Korea though?
Well, I mean, they just kind of lob missiles at people. I don't know exactly what does North Korea do that's any good. So poor taste, maybe not poor taste, but I don't know if it's apt.
Well, let's take a quick break and then come down the home stretch. But before we do that, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's available on Amazon Fire TV, on the free Fire TV channels app on your smart TV or your devices that plug into your TV, like the Fire Sticks and that sort of thing. But again, Locked On Sports is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today available on the free Fire TV channels app. And our friends at Supply House want you to know that you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get your job done correctly. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the game and talk to a real person every single time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, Dave, we're coming down the home stretch here. What did you make of Louis Varland coming in for Chris Paddock and more or less holding his own? Again, I know it's he was the 27th man, and so he had to go back down. And he is still inside that 15-day send down period, if I'm not mistaken. So a little while to go with that yet. But could you see him carving out a role with this big league team sometime soon? Because here's the deal for me. He's not super young. I'm pulling it up here just to make sure I get the exact right. He's 26 and a half. He sounds like a kid. I'm 26 and a half, but I'll be 27 in November, like my daughter does with her little friends. And so as much as I appreciate him as a leftover, or not to dismiss him, but like a seventh starter, sixth starter, he's also not young to the point where you got to be like, listen, keep him down in the minors, let him figure this thing out. He can help you up here. Now, the other issue is, who do you send down or get rid of to make room for him? A lot of people with no skin in the game would say Caleb Thielbar because he hasn't been very good. Some people would say Jay Jackson. And I'm not opposed to Jackson specifically. Thielbar, I'm a little less sure about just because he's been so good so recently. With that said, though, if you can make room for Louis Varland, he's a big leaguer right now for me, especially in shorter bursts.
Yes. I think that was going to be my point to your question about how do you see Varland as making an impact for this team. I'm not so sure about it as a starting pitcher. Certainly for not any kind of length of time. I think what we saw what we've seen in his last two performances, his stuff is good, and his the things he does on the mound will translate to success, at least in short bursts. And his outings have been a little longer, but if you're talking about going 6 innings, whatever, I wonder about that. And also the whole mentality of I don't know if it's freeing or liberating or whatever, but him being able to do this, knowing that he was probably going back after the next performance, that has to take a potentially hazardous component out of the mind a little bit and free him up to kind of do his best. If you talk about bring him up for Jackson or Thielbar or somebody else at some point more permanently, then maybe you kind of worry about the little goblins in a bad way getting at him and the confidence and that kind of thing. So I don't have any doubt that as a relief pitcher, he could help the team. And I would expect when the playoffs start, and I think that the Twins will be in there because it's not going to be hard to make the playoffs. Just look at the records of everybody. He's going to be on that roster. I think, when you get to a wild card or a division series, you're going to see Louis Varland in the bullpen for sure. But as far as starters go, I still say the next real big move you make, if you're replacing a Paddock or one of the other guys, is with a great established pitcher or a very good one. And I just don't know if Louis is going to be helpful as a regular every 5th day starting pitcher for these guys this year.
Yeah, and part of it too is just if you've got 5 guys better than him, but you can use him in that role out of the bullpen, it may not be what you had hoped for, but it's beneficial. Same with Festa. If you can't shoehorn him into your top 5, but his arm is good enough, or Zebby Matthews, who apparently is hitting 98, 99, if those guys are in a position where you don't think if they get knocked around in the big leagues, it's going to completely ruin them, you've got some guys you can shoehorn into unconventional roles. Twins, by the way, 74.7% to make the playoffs, 33.5 to win the division. The Guardians still have a little bit of an edge there at 50.6. But when you let's shift gears for a second here, or actually just to wrap it up. Rays are going to be in town. It's Pablo against Savali, Joe Ryan against Taj Bradley, and SWR against Zach Littell. Pitching-wise, the Rays starting staff has an ERA of 4.47. Now, before you get too excited, Twins 4.56. And the Rays bullpen, not much better, 4.37, whereas the Twins are a little better, 3.69. Nice. Do you consider the Rays a continuation of what we had called the soft schedule? Because they've had some issues. Randy Arozarena is really struggling. The Rays right now are 28th in team OPS. They're averaging 3.88 runs per game with a 661 OPS. Twins, by comparison, 4.64 runs per game and a 728 OPS. Where do the Rays fall on your if they're weak or not as part of a weak schedule? Because they're also like minus 70. What is it here? Minus, I had it pulled up and now it's gone. Minus 55 in runs differential too. So it's been a real struggle for them.
Well, maybe in our next show we can talk a little bit more about the Rays series, because we they're endlessly fascinating. Rocco learned a lot, I'm sure, and vice versa from Kevin Cash and that organization. So it's going to be interesting to see how Rocco manages this series, because he's going to be prepared for it, but he's also going to have a good feel for what the Rays might do, because he knows he's been there before and they think alike. So Rays, pretty good starting pitching, at least potentially. They're not getting great results. I think their bullpen, the people who they have active in the bullpen, are actually doing well. I think that's a strength of the team. So if the Twins are able to knock them around a little bit, the starters around, getting to the bullpen isn't necessarily a great thing. It's funny. I don't know how they're not hitting like they did last year, and it's a lot of the same players. Some of that's been injuries. Lau and Lowe haven't been high. They haven't been very high. They've been very low. And Lau. So, and Arozarena has just been, he'll run into a home run occasionally, but we don't have we think the Twins got issues, but so it's not soft, but it's dangerous, and it's they're going to have to play interested like they did against the A's, or they're going to get bad outcomes.
Yeah, it reminds me of when the Twins were at their worst and were really struggling. Well, we're plumb out of time and probably even have a little overrun. But again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. He's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warren, and you have been listening to Locked On Twins. And we'll see you tomorrow night.